All right. So you guys have the MOTD up. Basically, last time the parlay series that went through from the 24th through around the 46th or so cycle. Ketis was using the ritual parlay to summon the hunger represented by a plain human man in a sharp suit uh, in that conference room and so on. Ketis got a bunch of information from him, never asked him his name, but over the years of being killed over and over again by this representation of the hunger, the two kind of shared much information back and forth. He told of a creature that came to his world, his original world, a priest of a Neadramoth, which was a humanoid with a face made of tentacles. This priest spread a doctrine of chaos, unbound freedom, rebellion against order, and so on. Ketis repeated this ritual numerous times over the next couple decades, seeking to learn what the hunter's goals and motivations might be. And then the cycle after that, as you guys decided to kind of, put that aside for a little while, entering that cycle, you and the rest of the crew were all hit with this world-spanning cacophonous noise. There was actually rather billions of noises that were layered over top of another. The ship appeared above a world with exceptionally low gravity that was surrounded by floating islands and these massive bird-like creatures, lizard birds. The apotheosis fell into an inland sea, leaving behind a great incandescent maelstrom that you guys eventually, your away team, of course, plus Jack, jumped down into with the aid of Featherfall. You were attacked by this dragon-like creature. Peter managed to petrify it, and you left it floating on one of the islands with this, like a massive gargoyle, while you leapt down into the whirlpool. As soon as you passed in through the barrier, though, you were falling again, this time landed on hard stone of this massive underground complex, where these tiny rock-like people gathered around and helped you up, taking you to meet their leader, Chancellor Marla, who told you of an earlier visitor from a different world, a man named Dellen, who brought with him the light of creation. She took you to see a concert of sorts where this boy played a musical piece, and a great floating jellyfish appeared to devour it and then broadcasted that song out to the whole planet. Any questions? Everybody remember all that?
I think I'm good.
Good.
Mm-hmm, yep.
All right, then we will pick up from there. All right. So, you guys are still standing there with Marla in this kind of rotunda, this Golgotha, like a amphitheater almost, all staring at this floating jellyfish with these swirling galaxies in his head. Jack pipes up, standing beside you guys. He says, "So I guess that explains the sounds that exploded at us when we arrived here. That creature must be broadcasting that stuff out that it absorbs, to everyone and everything nearby, maybe. What do you guys think?"
Yeah, that makes sense.
Probably.
You guys don't really notice the reaction, of course, at first from these little people because they're just so tiny. But Chancellor Marla speaks up. She says she's only 2 feet tall, so she's like at your guys' knees basically. But you look down to her little 2-foot tall form, and you see these small tears that are darkened on her cheeks, from watching the performance and seeing the reaction, of course, of the jellyfish. She says that creature is the light of creation, but yes, you're correct. Like pieces of art that it eats, that it likes rather, it eats, and then it sends out to our world and to everyone, for everyone to enjoy. It's our most prestigious recognition. Like everyone on Legato strives to create a masterwork that we feed to the light, and then they'll be remembered forever. And as she's kind of saying this, you notice, like you see the movement in the distance there, the jellyfish is kind of swimming back through this low-gravity air back into the cave. And then that glowing wall kind of reappears, blocking that cave mouth that obscures everything behind it. What are you guys doing?
I'll ask the Chancellor, does everybody have to hear the things that it broadcasts, the light creation? Or is there a way to stop?
She kind of tilts her head a little bit to the side, looking up at you. You've seen this already, of course, but their necks don't quite work very well. They don't really have a reason to look up very often, it seems like. So she has to kind of rotate her head to the right a little bit and then look up at you. But it's a very quizzical, kind of puzzled look, and she says, have to? Why would you not want to?
Well, I just guess it depends on what it is that it's what message it's sending. Excuse me. Everyone might not want to hear everything it says.
The look on her face is very contemplative, like she doesn't really understand why anyone wouldn't. She says, I guess we've never really had that case come up. The light only chooses to absorb what it likes, I suppose, and maybe it only likes the nicer things. We don't really let, uh, let's say, things that people wouldn't like come to this chamber to try to proceed, approach the light with it. So, I don't know. I guess it's just never come up.
All right. Well, thank you. I was just curious.
She kind of nods at you. Did you guys have any other questions or anything for her, or anything of that sort? Or of the
I
situation?
don't think so. Can you guys think of any? 'Cause, I mean, obviously, we don't know what we know in the future, so it's not like we can ask questions about, the future stuff with the cat stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And you, at this point, you don't even know them necessarily as Dellen's cat beyond, just that you know that a man named Dellen came here and brought at least one with him.
Okay.
So what happened to the man named Dellen?
You're asking Chancellor Marla?
Yeah.
She said, well, he... This may sound a little silly, but I mean, we think he's back there. And she points to the wall.
Is there any way in there?
We've tried. There's a rumor that a student once was allowed inside the cave, but really we've anyone that ever tries to go in is immediately, well, really you might even want to just see it to have that make sense. But basically you try to walk in and you're not in there. You're just standing right back outside again, and you're a little disoriented. Usually, it wears off after a couple hours, but some of the kids seem to like it. It makes them feel a little funny, and maybe it's something like being drunk or something. I wouldn't know. So over time, you guys, I mean, if you don't have more questions for her directly, but basically over the next few days, the rest of the crew comes down to this space down here under the ocean, and you guys have kind of gathered that students from the conservatory and all of the other nearby societies of these peoples, they all work very hard to hone their craft and submit something to the light. All of them, all people in the society do this now. They all have their own individual jobs, but in their free time, they essentially try to create this, some work of art to show. And if it's deemed good enough, then the light broadcasts that work to the entire planet. And by that, they feel like they're essentially remembered forever. This has been a relatively new occurrence, so of course it's only been, 2-3 generations now, however many 50 years would be. But it's something that has kind of completely transformed all of their society here for this. The downside being that if the work is rejected, it's completely eliminated. It's wiped out and forgotten. There's just a hole left there. The people know that they created something, just don't remember what it was. So sometimes they even have these repeated experiences where they are essentially making the same thing over and over again because it's essentially erased. In communicating with the ship before they came down, Drew and Yorth have triangulated that the location of the apotheosis seems like it lines up with this cavern down here somewhere. They haven't been able to line it up perfectly, but Elsbeth does pipe up and say that she expects that it probably is behind there, that maybe Dellen brought apotheosis, or well, not that, but specifically whatever he brought with him essentially is the magnet for this, and that's where apotheosis landed. Back in that cave somewhere. It could also be, empowering or something to that field, because they've noticed that the field seems a bit stronger now that or has been becoming stronger over time, rather. What are you guys doing?
All right. Well,
between us. Oh, sorry. Between us, we know that the hunger absorbs whatever it comes in contact with, and this thing might be a little dangerous if it gets absorbed. Maybe we should make a best effort to try and save this thing.
Jack responds, what thing are you referring to specifically?
This jellyfish thing.
Yeah, it seems like it pretty strong.
He kind of nods solemnly. He says if it comes to that may be something we need to consider. And we still have some time. It's we're only a couple weeks into our vacation here, and hopefully all things going according to plan, it'll still be another 11 months before we have to concern ourselves with that. But yeah, I agree that might be a last resort if we have to come to that.
As a backup, do we have the technology to be able to transport this?
By this, you're referring to the jellyfish?
Yes.
The space might be a concern. I mean, you guys see that the ceiling's in there. There isn't a lot of room as it is, but I mean, we presumably could. The crystal that we brought from the Tatusians planet, it's still there. So I mean, we theoretically could bring, you know, I don't know if we could bring the whole thing along, like if you know the tendrils might be able to wrap up or something. I don't know. I don't think it could float at full height, but it presumably could still fit. Yes.
All right, something to think about.
All right. So over the span of the next week or so, at this point, you guys, you know, the crew has kind of come down and started to enmesh themselves a little bit in the society, trying to learn things, that kind of stuff, having dinner amongst the people. The Legatans seem to at once to be utterly enamored and scared of Toki. By the way, the younger ones are more brave about approaching it, but still scurry away every time that Toki looks at them. Like as soon as Toki looks, you know, moves his face in their direction, they avert their eyes and will turn around, like to basically not look at him, or not be caught looking at it almost. You notice Elsbeth is basically never without her journals. She's just scribbling constantly, even while they're, you know, while other people are talking, or even while she's having conversations, still be kind of constantly jotting stuff down. Yorith studies the extant wildlife here, the kind of cavernous creatures like these blind worms that you see that are crawling along the walls from time to time, that seem to be burrowing in and out of the kind of the cavern walls. There's these small winged scorpions that flit around. They don't appear to be dangerous or anything, but she's taking diagrams of these and you know, reference notes and things like that in this big leather-bound book that she made almost 40 years ago at this point. Alice has made friends with a group of these little stone children, but the three of you seem to struggle. Actually, you guys can't really tell them apart very well. Even the children look just like the adults, are basically the same size, and they all look very much alike. But Alice seems to have no problem telling them apart. But as time kind of goes by, and you're kind of learning as much as you can about these folks and how you know might be able to get in there, or at least you know, have a meeting of sorts with this jellyfish, Yorith gathers the crew. She says, "So, I mean, it's clear what we need to do, right? I mean, we need to art this bitch up hard and get into that cave, right? I mean, to get the apotheosis."
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, dogs are making noise. So, what you basically are doing here at this point, and God damn it, where did I put that fan? I must have moved it, but I don't know where I put it. All right. Anyway, what you guys are essentially doing for this cycle is you will be spending basically most of the year kind of preparing something, some essentially art piece. It doesn't have to be a painting or anything, but you need to be kind of making something. You'll have a couple of examples, of course, for the other members of the crew, but you know, you don't need it. You know, it's not like you're going to be singing or anything of that sort, but some kind of an art piece that your character would be creating to present to this jellyfish to try to appeal to it. So be thinking about that. We'll be getting to those here in a little bit, about what your character would be doing. You know, maybe you're, you know, like whittling and you're carving something out of wood, or, you know, for Druidcraft, for Navarre, could be, you know, making some intricate sculpture, or, you know, a wooden animal of some sort, anything like that. But anyways, what your character would embody their expression of in a creative manner that might appeal to the jellyfish here. So basically, that's what your characters, without, you know, if there's other stuff that your characters would be doing, is there anything else that you guys would be doing, you know, here on this specific plane, looking for, you know, trying to get into that cave?
I guess I'll just again, while we're doing the other stuff, just study the plant life and everything around.
Sure.
See if anything to help me brew some more Stridos, since I can't get back to the ship right now. You
can. You guys can get back and forth to the ship. Oh, you need to.
Okay. All right. Well, either way, I'm still going to look around the plant life and study it.
Sure.
And I'm also going to use some of it to see if I can turn any of it into like paints and stuff. Might try to do a painting for my art thing.
Okay. Make a nature check. So, with what the chemicals and things that you have on the ship available to you, and the materials that you find down here, you and Elsbeth actually both kind of work together on this a little bit, because she's, intending something similar. It sounds like not necessarily the same thing, but maybe something on the along the same lines. So she's kind of going along with you. You guys, take several outings to go and try to retrieve different materials that you found, and small minerals that could be ground up a little bit and turned into a kind of a paste that could be made into a pigment and so on. But you spend a good while kind of gathering up enough of these different resources to give yourself access to the colors that you might want. You successfully pull out the things that you might be able to use to design what it is whatever it is you're thinking about. Peter, Navarra.
Well, I'm just going to try to walk through that barrier, see what it feels like.
So as you walk up near it, it's basically think of it similar to the dome that was around was that Cragshade? But anyway, the dome kind of translucent field, except this is not, it's opaque. It's just a rainbow of oil color, like oil slick water, like a rainbowy kind of a color almost. And as soon as you walk through it, you don't feel a barrier of any kind, but the light it's like you're walking into a cloud. There's a solid light behind it, but you don't feel anything. It's just the appearance of passing through this and then into kind of a puffy white feeling. And you take 2 more steps and you're facing the opposite direction, looking back out to the amphitheater area, this Golgotha. And your head is got a dull ache in the back of it, and your vision is blurry, and you're kind of stumbling a little bit. Make a dex save.
That's
Here we go.
And you stumble over, tripping over the steps that lead up to the kind of stage area, and face plant into the dirt. Everyone's good at face plants, and you're still just, your head is spinning so much that you kind of try to lean over on one elbow and right yourself and try to stand back up, and you just end up falling right back over again. And you're kind of sitting there just giggling and chuckling to yourself at how silly this all is. Your mind is kind of swimming a little bit. You feel, for lack of a better term, you feel drunk, essentially. But it was worth a shot. Make a perception check on Navarra. With that, when you're kind of laying there and giggling, looking up at the underside of the ocean, basically, you're looking up, but there's no rock ceiling here. You're looking up at the water. You can occasionally see very large aquatic creatures swimming by. You can't see the smaller ones because it's just too far away. But you're looking up at the underside of the ocean, essentially, at this inland sea. But anyways, looking up at that and kind of giggling, and just this euphoric feeling almost that has come over you, you distinctly do somehow remember. It feels a little bit like a dream, like a hazy dream that you woke up from, but you remembered hearing like a concerned squeal almost coming from inside that cave. Unlike a sound, like you can't really place it because it doesn't sound like another animal that you're familiar with. But a squeal of worry almost that you heard kind of in that cloud. So what else are you doing you don't need to tell me necessarily what it is that you're preparing, but are you doing anything else with your time here beyond preparing that piece, whatever it is it's going to be?
No, probably just trying to carve some animal.
Okay. All right. How about Peter?
We'll split my time between making a sketch, a large sketch, and also trying to use my arcane to sense magic or sense something in the cave or around the cave. If I'm not getting too much interference, trying to essentially buckaroo banzai my way through that hill, that mountain.
Meaning trying to, carve through it or just sense through it?
First sense through it, and then maybe try transmuting part of the rock into mud or something. See if I can get around that milky thing, just to see if it's just a doorway.
Let's start with an Arcana check. All right, you definitely sense a strong source of magic behind the barrier, but it doesn't feel quite like apotheosis. And because you at this point you've had, in the 47 cycles that you guys have gone through, you've been in close physical contact with it probably mid-30s, like 35-ish times, that you were able to successfully retrieve it. And you kind of gotten used to it, but this doesn't quite feel right, but you're not sure if it's just the barrier maybe is kind of altering the wavelength of it essentially coming out to you. That could be the case. It could be the presence of this jellyfish that is altering in some way. You're not necessarily sure. It just doesn't feel quite the same. It definitely feels like a strong source of the same kind of power, but not necessarily exactly the same. But in your research and attempts to kind of make your way back there, you have kind of carved out a small tunnel going around it, but you noticed almost immediately that as soon as you carve through the rock, that barrier is right behind it. It's not like it's just a wall in front of the cave entrance. It's you notice this immediately, that the shape of it's a sphere that's surrounding that. And the one time that you saw the jellyfish come out, it took the sphere down, but it took the wall down essentially, and then came out and was visible for a minute, and then it went back in and the sphere came back up. But by all attempts that you've kind of probed at it, the sphere itself seems intangible. It doesn't seem like it doesn't need to be penetrated. It's not something you can try to break through. It doesn't even exist as far as you can tell. Like it's not there in the sense that you could walk right through it. It's not a barrier. But as soon as you're through it, you somehow just, and you over time kind of give yourself the shot at doing this as well, like Noavara did. But you step through it and just, you're walking right back out again, and for the next couple hours, you're a little bit fucked up.
Okay.
Did you guys do anything else, or want to skip ahead to the kind of test thing? Not test, but you know what I mean?
If I can, I wanted to brew some more Stratos before we actually carry on for anything that could be dangerous.
Sure. Yeah, you can refill all of yours, it's fine. You have more than enough time, so, and you have plenty of materials.
Thank you.
Go ahead and mark yours back to full. I think you have 2, right? You only have 2 because you gave one
Yeah.
sacrifice. All right.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, you can refill those. All right, so time passes. You guys keep kind of working on these things, trying to just get them just right. A couple of times throughout it, Peter, your sketch, like you get it almost perfect, almost where you want it to be, but you look at it and you're like, this doesn't feel quite it. Like your skills are improving over time with it as well, of course. So you end up scrapping and starting over again, and then improving upon it. You can end up making a couple of different drafts. Similarly for Navarro, for whatever you're working on with this, that you get it almost right and you end up having to adjust it. So thankfully with some druid craft you can kind of refill it back up, but it doesn't feel quite right to be doing this, not cheating, but doing this via let's say controlled means like that. So eventually you end up just scrapping it all together and using natural wood to start actually working with this. And it feels so much better anyways. You feel more at peace, and it's a very kind of meditative experience for you almost, to be working away with this, with actual wood with your hands, as opposed to kind of creating it out of nothing. But you guys kind of, over time, work on these, in different incarnations and repetitive effects and so on. But, most of it is largely enjoyable. The time here's been peaceful. It seems like a very laid-back kind of a society here. But near the end of the year, another ceremony is held in front of this mouth of this cave here, specifically for you and your crew this time, though. And Chancellor Marla has gathered all of the leaders of the Legaten peoples here to witness your attempts to interest this jellyfish creature. There's a life-size statue of a humanoid man, presumably Dellin himself, was erected by one of the groups and brought along. It stands at the back of the crowd, kind of overlooking this event. And of course, that incandescent gleaming wall of light at the mouth of the cave is there. The crowd of tiny rock-like peoples are gathered in this Golgotha, like a dense bowl of these little fidgeting stones almost. everybody's kind of gathered up. The 8 of you, you've got Davenport, Alice, Yorth, Jack, Elspeth, and then of course Peter, Navarre, and Titus. All of you are standing there. Does anybody want to volunteer to go for the other 5? Still have to go too. But Chancellor Marla is just kind of waiting for somebody to volunteer.
I guess I'll go.
Okay. She kind of smiles at you and waves you up. And you saw, by the way, that Davenport was like stepping up. He was about to put his hand up to go first, right before you offered. So what do you present?
I don't know what animal. Let's see. We're gonna do. It's gonna be a carving of a panther. We'll do that.
Okay. As soon as you step up, how big are we talking?
I don't know, as big as I can. How big is the? Because there aren't any trees down here, are there?
Yeah, there are. I mean, they're stunted and they're more roots than trees. They're not trees in the sense of, a tree that grows up and has leaves out of it. They're kind of like long, winding roots, basically. But there's wood.
Okay, well, lifelike, I guess.
Okay.
If I have enough wood for that.
Okay. So you step up, and your presentation is wheeled out on this cart with a tarp over it, wheeled up over in front of you, near the mouth of the cave there, and the whole crowd is kind of still and hushed and staring at you. And as soon as you yank the tarp away, there is a reaction from the crowd that is funny and a little bit sad at the same time, and then there's a guffaw coming from your crew that are like, you're standing on the stage and your crew's off to the right, all kind of lined up. So basically the other 7 members are all just kind of watching you intently, and you pull this off. And as soon as you pull that off, Drew is just immediately guffawing and leaning over and just like hand slapping his knees, laughing hysterically. At this, and it's not that this piece isn't great. There's as far as, well, in fact, make a you know what? I wouldn't call it a performance. Let's make it a sleight of hand check. All right. So it's actually a very intricate and well made and just a flawless depiction of a panther. Seated, tail kind of curled around its feet, laying down, looking out at the crowd. The crowd looks at once very scared and happy, like, because they're looking up at this thing. This thing looks like very scary to them, and it seems like they don't really want to look at it too close, so they're like kind of looking off slightly to one side. But they're cheering and roaring and seem to be enjoying it very much. But Drew just won't stop laughing. He's like hysterically laughing, just chuckling, and he's kind of settled down to the floor, like onto one knee, and is just like he can't control himself. Elspeth is kind of got a hand on his shoulder, like shaking him, trying to get him to shut up because he's almost disturbing the crowd. But he just can't stop himself. But you've kind of brought this up. Did you have anything to say or anything, or are you just ready to present it to the jellyfish?
No, just present it.
Okay. All right. So you grab the cart and kind of push it over to the front of the wall there, and the crowd just goes hush silently. And Drew finally kind of controls himself, and he's still like kind of leaned over a little bit, just like he's out of breath from laughing so much. But everybody's just kind of in a still silence and watching the wall. And when you bring it in front of the wall, it actually begins to fade a little bit, and then it's just this white, kind of misty, cloudy color, where the kind of rainbow sheen has gone away, and it's there. And make a perception check, just Navarre. You listen intently for, hearing if maybe that call will come out to you again. This time you don't hear anything, but there's an intangible sense of comfort almost coming from there. Like there's something home-like that's inside there, and you can just feel it. It's in your mind, and you can just tell that there's something beyond that. but it doesn't look like you're not seeing much of a response, and you're not really hearing anything or anything else. It's just that kind of that sense of comfort just in your mind, but it doesn't look like it's responded. So Chancellor Marla kind of nods solemnly. She says, "Well, and we can always try again. It's a wonderful carving," and she kind of helps usher you off of the stage. And then she looks over to to your team. She says, who would like to go next? And before she even finishes that sentence, Drew's arm goes up, and he says, I'm ready. And he's still chuckling, and he's like kind of reverted back to not being able to contain himself. And he heads up there, and he unveils. He has the thing wheeled up, and similarly, he pulls off this tarp, and he unveils this large, intricately carved stone sculpture. The gathered crowd gasps in astonishment, and then you hear like nervous laughter coming from the whole crowd, and then what sounds, it's a little bit like fear, and there are oohs and ahs, and many stand up to get a better look at this sculpture, like they did with yours, and you intuit that this must resemble by now some beast that is dangerous or terrifying to the Legatans, but to you guys, it's just a sculpture of a simple house cat. And he was laughing hysterically because all this year that he spent carving this thing, and you were doing almost the same thing, and you go first when he was already ready to go, and steal his thunder. So he was just laughing hysterically at how ironic and funny that was to him. Which, by the way, that was not planned. I had specifically planned that he'd carved a house cat, and you go up and carve a wooden sculpture of a panther. But the crowd seems to love it. This one seems maybe a little less scary to them, and there are even some squabbles about who can get the best angle to view it from. But the whole cavern kind of goes silent as the sculpture's wheeled up to the mouth of the cave. It's so quiet you could hear a pin drop, but similarly nothing seems to happen. In fact, actually this time the wall doesn't even change color. It stays the kind of rainbow oil slick sheen. Jellyfish doesn't seem to react at all. Disappointedly, the Legatans, though, that with no small amount of trepidation, they kind of carefully move the statue off to the side. Not looking at it directly. And then Chancellor Marla asks, who would like to go next? You guys don't, the rest of the team still has to go, so it's up to you guys.
You want to go, Sako? Or you want me to go? Okay.
I can go if you want.
Go ahead.
Alright, mine is kind of a charcoal sketch. I want to say, about 40-50 inches big, not too big.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially a series of small images. In the middle of it is a large rectangle with an image, and I'll explain them. On the outside are little square boxes similar to an advent calendar, and each one of those boxes represents just a small snippet of every world that we've been to. One has little gorilla monkey things, one has the robots, and it depicts a small snippet of their life. In the middle, that large rectangle is just a blackness, a smoke, with tentacles pulling from each of those little boxes, and it looks kind of chaotic and kind of dark. And inside that rectangular box is us with kind of a radiant light in the middle, and it looks like we're trying to stop it.
Wow. So as soon as you've unveiled it, Marla actually she kind of looks around a little bit like this is not standard practice for her, but she wants to see it. So she kind of comes around and again has to kind of turn her head up because it's taller than she is, almost twice as tall. But she's looking it over, and you see her little kind of stone mouth just open up slowly into kind of a surprise of like, wow, how intricate and complicated and impressive this work is. And she's looking it over with awe. At how you haven't seen art in the sense of art of like drawings or paintings or that kind of thing down here. They don't do cave paintings or anything of that sort. Maybe it's just a lack of the manual dexterity needed to do that kind of thing. Their art seems to be a lot more utilitarian, a lot more smooth surfaces, right angles, things like that. And this was something that was certainly very impressive to them. And the whole crowd is just kind of in a stunned awe, just staring at this thing, and like they're trying to take in every little detail of it. And she says, "Wow, like, Peter, this is incredible. We've never seen something quite like this. This is, wow. I mean, the light of creation it's sure to respond to this. Are you ready to present it?"
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of wheel the easel over to the front of it, And they almost seem sad because you guys will still remember it, but if the light doesn't respond, it will disappear, and they won't. That's why they were all trying to get as much detail from it as they could, because it's going to could potentially disappear from their minds. I'd say probably similarly it'd be a sleight of hand check for you. You wheel it up there, and the field at first doesn't change. It doesn't react. Make a perception roll, just Peter. You're the only one that can hear this, but there's a very mournful call, almost like a whale's call, like a whale song. That you hear in the middle of your mind. It's not echoing through the cave. It's not audible anywhere else, but you hear that specifically coming through there. And the field kind of shimmers a little bit. It's still got the kind of white cloudiness there, but there was definitely a response, and the drawing does not disappear. It's still there. It didn't, the jellyfish did not come out, but it did respond. It looks like. You hear Marla kind of gasp over the side. She's like, I mean, this is unprecedented. We've now seen this twice, that the light of creation has responded in some way. Usually it's an all or nothing kind of thing. Well, I guess we don't really know what that means, but I suppose you guys are strange enough on your own anyway. So I guess this way she kind of is gesturing you off to take your drawing off to the side. And as soon as are you following along to head off the stage?
Yeah, if everything is calmed down.
Okay. Well, it's less calm than ever, in fact, actually, almost, just because, other than maybe Drew's disruption of the barking laughter, but as you're trying to pull the drawing off stage, the crowd is starting to gather around to try to get as much, looking at this as they can, to try to, understand all the little details of it and so on. But you're kind of sent off stage and then rejoin the crew as they're looking over your drawing, your sketch. And before Marla's even kind of made her way back up the stage, Alice's hand goes up. She says, I want to go. I'm afraid that with all them moving around, it'll mess mine up. So, can I go? And she's still very young and impetuous a little bit, not necessarily waiting for the decorum of what the this almost ritual ceremony is supposed to look like. But she heads up on stage, and they wheel hers up. And what you guys see is this large, there's a tarp over it, and she lifts the tarp off very, very carefully. She's exceptionally careful with this. And from this angle, you guys are especially so much taller than the stage, than obviously this is built for very small people. But you guys, are towering over this. You can see this large flat board that she's set up on wheels. And it's wheeled up to the mouth with exceptional care. And on this board are just millions of tiny colored sticks. That are all interwoven together to form what from the top would look like a drawing of Legato, of all these various colors, but they're all think of like popsicle sticks kind of weaved together. Alice beams kind of an awkward smile out to the crowd and kind of curtsies, and then she steps up to the board, and you see her pull one tiny stick out, and as soon as she does, this eruption of colored sticks just explodes in this long chain reaction, piece by piece popping up into the air and then landing with this kind of oddly satisfying clatter. And it continues for a solid minute as these pieces kind of snake around, unraveling itself. And then once it finishes, and then the room is silent again, she kind of stands there transfixed as the crowd kind of was oohing and awing, and it kind of settles down. And then she turns and curtsies again. And she turns and looks at the field, but the field doesn't change. Nothing seems to react at all. Yorith kind of looks nervously at you guys. She says, I mean, Jack and I, we're not quite ready yet. Ketis, I mean, do you mind going?
Sure.
She says we're still kind of working some things out, and you see Yorith and Jack are kind of whispering amongst. They're standing off to the side a little bit, working amongst themselves, like they're. You see Jack kind of moving his hand with a specific beat, like there's they're going over a routine of some kind. All right, so Marla kind of brings you up on stage. What are you presenting?
It's a painting, and it's going to be of the Dallin's Cap. Of course, we don't know that it's called that, but of the Dallin's Cap going down through the Maelstrom and towards the top it's going to be lighter, like it's lighter around the Ellen's cap, and at the bottom the little Legaten people are going to be standing there, and it's going to be darker in the bottom, so it's making it look like the jellyfish is bringing light with it, and they're standing there with their hands up.
Well, similarly to Peter's, his unveiling of his own, Marla kind of comes around with this just wide-eyed awe, and the whole crowd is standing on their feet, and some are even kind of standing on the tiny little pews that the chairs essentially, or benches rather, that they were on, just trying to get a better look at this drawing, because they've very rarely seen the jellyfish come out, so they don't really get a lot of detail of it. They don't necessarily get to depict it, and they don't, like I said, they don't have art, so they don't, those that weren't here on that particular day, don't have any idea what it looks like. So they're kind of all just in this transfixed state of staring at this thing, and kind of appreciating the effort put into this. Marla says, "Do you have anything else to present, or is it, are you ready to take this over?"
I'm ready.
All right, so you wheel it over. Make we'll call it a sleight of hand again for the drawing of or the painting of it. Oh, did I? I did. I skipped one. Go ahead. I mean, it's a solid enough painting. You spent a lot of time on it. It's better than they could pull off, but it doesn't have the kind of complexity and work like maybe Peter spent a little more time perfecting his sketches, and the paints that you've been able to manage here aren't exactly ideal for this, whereas charcoal is pretty readily available. But it's clear what it is, and it still looks very nice, but you present it to the front of the field there, and you don't see a response. Go ahead and make a perception roll. Yeah, there's no, it doesn't feel like anything. Like you're not really getting much from this field. It almost feels like there's just nothing there, and you're just you feel a little bit silly almost, like you put all this time and effort in and for nothing. And it almost feels like in the lens, let's say, of your guys' mission here, like maybe all of this effort was kind of for nothing. But you finish the process. Marla looks a little bit, not sad, but a little bit like, wishes she could comfort you a bit, and you're kind of sent off stage and returned to the crew. Elsbeth goes up with a similar easel to that you and Peter had, and she unveils a painting of a very complicated and dense painting of a bustling market square that you guys recognize from your home planet. Then you're each kind of stricken with a certain kind of melancholy of homesickness almost. But similarly, she takes it up to the front of to the mouth of the cave. The crowd loves it, but she takes it up there, and you don't see any response. You don't necessarily know what she felt or saw, but you don't see anything from the outside at least. After she comes down, though, the last of your guys' crew, of course, the two people that are left anyway, Jack and Yorth, they step up as if it's maybe something they're presenting together, and there we go. And you haven't seen them a whole lot this cycle. They've been spending a lot of time together, working on this thing here. Specifically, this is what they were, going to present to everybody, and this is what they've been kind of keeping to themselves a little bit about. It's not uncommon for them to go off like this in close collaboration on previous cycles, but this time seems a little more kind of dense than it had been in the past. Most of the time in studying different parts of the world that they had been doing, but this time they got together to work on this very specific craft, and as they approach the stage and sit down, Navarre, you can't remember the last time that you saw your sister nervous, but she looks very nervous. Jack's always a little bit nervous. He's always kind of a little bit nerdy, but he's in rare form here. And Yorth also seems kind of anxious about this performance. But they walk up, and she picks up a violin, and Jack sits down at a big grand piano, and they play a duet. And in watching them play this composition, you realize that is way loud. Hang on. There we go. You realize that really for the first time just how kind of profoundly that there we go. That Jack and Yorth's relationship has kind of changed over this time. Time's obviously very different for the 8 of you than it has been for really anyone else that's ever lived. During your 100-year journey, obviously it's only been 47 of it so far, but you guys don't age thanks to whatever forces keep kind of restitching you back together at the beginning of each year. Your mind stays sharp, you guys learn skills and languages and new proficiencies and so on. And you're becoming remarkably capable during your voyage on the Hermian shoes, but it's not just your minds that are developing across this kind of ageless time. There's something less quantifiable rather that develops too. And the 8 of you have something that nobody else really has ever had, and that's time. All the time in the world, enough to grow indescribably close as a family, and for Yorth and Jack, obviously more than that. Looking back, this performance is where that love that Yorth and Jack cultivated quietly and cautiously over the last half-century truly bloomed. This was where adoration and respect in every measure and every note, and after the performance, they kind of take each other's hands, and they hold them high in the air, kind of like a like a bow, like a play, like they might bow at the end. And they swoop down for this kind of over-the-top bow, and just laughing at this kind of drama of it all. And this little audience cheers, and Yorth and Jack laugh, and they don't let each other's hands go. And then they stop laughing, and the crowd kind of begins to calm, and they still don't let each other's hands go, and they keep not letting go. And Yorth says, Jack, do you want to go talk for a while? And Jack replies awkwardly, yeah. And then they kind of head off of this stage and heading up the stone ramp, not really rejoining the crew, not really waiting for the rest, not really even paying attention to the response from the cave entrance there, as they kind of just make their way off. And after all of these offerings are completed, you guys are the rest of you, the 6 of you. It shouldn't have been hard to do math on 8 minus 2, but anyways, you're all kind of standing there. Marla looks sad, but not all that surprised. It seems like that's kind of the norm for them, is to not be getting much of a reaction. Why do I have a... Oh, it's in there. I had a message on Discord. I didn't see what it was. But that is the norm, basically, is to get no reaction on most days. So she's kind of, up at the front of the stage, and they're gathering the pieces that were still left behind that were somehow not absorbed by the jellyfish. But Elsbeth and Drew are both kind of looking a little bit despondent. Elsbeth says, apparently the jellyfish didn't like any of our works enough to let us in. I mean, after all that effort, but we need to get past that barrier somehow. What do you guys, what are your ideas?
There has to be a way to communicate with it somehow. Maybe we could inform it of the incoming danger.
Alice is looking a little bit sad. She's kind of like, pushing her foot through the dirt a little bit. Drew's kind of nodded a little bit. He says it seems like there ought to be, but I don't know. This was kind of our shot from the start. I really don't want it to come down to having to destroy this place, but I don't know. Guess I'm at a loss. Drew pipes up again. He says, well, I don't know. If nobody has any ideas, it doesn't seem like we're going to be making any more progress tonight. How about maybe we sleep on it? We'll come up with a new plan in the morning.
Okay.
Everybody heading off to
all we got.
bunks then? Okay. All right. Then night comes. You guys kind of bunk in for the night. It's still a nice and peaceful place, but there is a certain kind of dour melancholy that has kind of settled over everybody, that this was kind of your plan. It doesn't seem to have worked, and you're no closer now to retrieving Apotheosis and getting out of here. And you don't have very long. Based on your math, it's been 11 months, which means you might have the cycles have been more chaotic as of late. They haven't been in exactly a set year anymore. Sometimes they're 11 months and 1 week. Sometimes they're 11 months and 2 weeks or 3. But it's varying too much to be comfortable anymore. You may not have very long at all. And in fact, that kind of sense of dread almost is over you, that it's coming very soon. And for that reason, Ketis and Peter, you guys nod off okay. The rest of the crew seems to have as well. And you guys are kind of bunked inside the down with these people in this underground complex. But in the middle of the night, though, Navarre, you're just struggling to sleep. You can't sleep with the concern that it's going to come and it's going to absorb all of these nice people that you've met and this kind of creature that sung out to you with kind of desperation and concern. So what are you doing? Middle of the night, you can't sleep. You seem to be the only one awake.
I guess walk out to the cave and just kind of stand there.
Okay.
See if I can't get its attention.
Okay. You, as soon as you get into the area, the Golgotha basically coming down the slope so you can see where this kind of amphitheater area is, there's no barrier in front of the cave. There's lights moving inside of it, but the barrier's not there.
I guess go inside.
Okay. On approaching, you see a small flitting of jellyfish. It looks like a baby, just an itty bitty little one that's floating around the entrance, and the light that you were seeing flitting around is this thing kind of flitting around. It seems like it's able to move faster than the larger one, because the larger one was very kind of sluggish. This thing is moving around pretty rapidly, but it's kind of swirling itself around as if it would if it was swimming in water, with its tendrils kind of trailing behind it. And the light is the reflection of this kind of swirling galaxy and its jelly cap that is reflecting off of the cave, off of the inside of the cave wall. But it's just kind of swirling around there, and as soon as you kind of make your way down the slope and it kind of recognizes that something is there, it freezes still, and then the barrier starts to kind of fade in right in front of it. But it hasn't it's not like you can still see through it. It's not all the way there, but it's kind of just like it's protecting itself, like it's looking. It's there's no eyes. You can't tell that it's looking at you, but you feel like it's looking at you. What are you doing?
I guess try to communicate with it. Tell it, I don't mean it any harm.
Okay. It doesn't. Are you verbally saying this out loud to it?
Yeah.
It doesn't. Nothing changes. It's still kind of. It's still not. It's frozen in midair. You can still kind of see it through this kind of cloudy sheen, but it doesn't look like it's reacted.
Well, I wouldn't know that I could speak to it any other way, so I guess just kind of sit down on the ground, try to show it that I'm not gonna go after it.
Okay. So you kind of sit down cross-legged, just looking at its direction, obviously showing that you're not threatening, and a good solid minute passes without any reaction, and you're really sleepy at this point. But you're kind of on the same token, kind of almost adrenaline fueled at this. Seeing that there's maybe you'll have some kind of communication with. Maybe you can save this cycle. And it takes a while. It's, like I said, it's a good solid minute, which is a lot longer than you'd think when this basically this creature that's just staring at you, and slowly as soon as that kind of minute ends, basically slowly that field begins to fade down, and until it's not there anymore. And seeing you not moving, seeing you not responding, the jellyfish starts to kind of slowly work its way back and forth, like just kind of like the way that it would if you shook your head, but you had a beard made of jellyfish tentacles. That the tendrils are kind of just slowly floating back and forth.
So hold my hand out to it.
I mean, it's still very far away. You're basically at the base of the stage, essentially, like at the front of the stage. So you're still probably 20 feet back from it. You kind of reaching out towards it, though?
Yeah.
It lifts up in the air a little bit higher even, like it's trying to get a better look at you because you're, at the base of the steps. And it doesn't move towards you that so much. I mean, a tiny bit just because of the angle that it needed to go. But it kind of moves itself up a little bit, like kind of, jellyfish like flump, kind of as if it was pushing out water. And then is up a little bit higher. And one of the tentacles kind of just very sheepishly and slowly kind of meanders out, like it's kind of pointing in your direction.
Alright, I guess just slowly stand up and try to take a step towards it.
Okay. Make a animal handling check. Okay. It doesn't pull away. It doesn't move closer to you, but it is still kind of holding that kind of tendril out towards you. It's basically at eye level as you've stepped up the stairs now and are at the base of the stage, and are looking over at it. It's essentially floating at eye level with you.
Alright, I guess just make my way slowly closer to it.
Okay. It doesn't move. It actually waits for you to kind of close that distance. And you're kind of standing there. It's still kind of pointing at you, but you're 3 feet from it, and it actually, you see it. It doesn't have a face of any kind. It's basically just a a jelly cap with these galaxies swirling in it. But you see, based on the tentacles, that it has turned away from you. That it's kind of rotated itself away from you. Essentially would be facing in towards the cave, and then it moves a foot back, and then it stops and kind of rotates back at you.
Follow it.
Okay. It sees the okay. You step in, and this cavern is really, really dark for this first kind of portion of it, and it actually has kind of moved a little bit back. Basically, it's kind of let you catch up to it a little bit, and it's one of its tentacles is now kind of reaching down, and you feel it start to brush your shoulder. You just let it?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. You feel a sharp sting at your shoulder, and you definitely don't have the impression that it's trying to hurt you at all. It feels like this would be kind of holding hands essentially for this thing to try to lead you back this way, but it doesn't hurt that much. It's like a bee sting on your shoulder. Like, it's definitely sharp, and it'll bleed, but it doesn't feel like it's gonna hurt you all that bad. But anyways, it's kind of latched into your shoulder a little bit and is kind of still pulling away from you as if it's trying to lead you further into the cave. You keep following?
Yeah.
Okay. So this floating jellyfish has led you back and then around a corner, and then around one like an S shape essentially. And as soon as you've kind of come around the first one, you can see that there's this kind of glowing purple light, like it's like a heartbeat almost. It glows and then dims and then glows and then dims. And you come around the corner, and in here you can see that it opens up into this larger chamber, that this cavern area that it's led you into has these kind of glowing crystals embedded into the wall, and you're no longer alone in here. You spot as soon as you come around the corner here that there are a half dozen, 6 more of these jellyfish of various sizes. One is very large and taking up most of the room, and then another 3 or 4 that are kind of medium, and then another one that's larger but not quite as big as the previous. And the little one that's kind of attached to you continues to kind of pull you along, like as if you basically had to walk right between these guys, which is certainly, I would say that Naivara can handle that without a roll to decide whether she's doing that or not, but she would certainly feel some serious trepidation having to walk through these kind of alien creatures, essentially right through their tentacles basically, to get where this thing is pulling you. So how would Naivara handle that?
I would follow, but I would follow cautiously, just kind of keep an eye on him as I'm going through.
Okay. Make a perception roll. At first you didn't really notice because of how kind of shocked and surprised you were, but they're not moving. They're all kind of they're physically kind of floating in space, so they're moving only very slightly. Let's say they're not frozen. They're not like frozen in space or anything, but their tentacles are only very slightly moving, and they're not moving around the room or anything. They all look very. You get the impression that you're being stared at by all of them. And they're very tense and are very nervous about that. In fact, roll an insight check. Yeah, you get the sense that they're very tense. You're not picking up much else, but this is a very tense moment for sure. But the little one is still pulling you back towards the back of the cavern. So you kind of continue following it along. And where you kind of come around a little corner, you see this little kind of nook almost. And and as soon as you've come around in this like wall area to see this nook, the head of the little baby jellyfish lights up very brightly, like those stars just kind of burst up open to kind of lighten up the rest of this room so that you can see it. And sitting there on the floor in this little nook that you gather is, this little jellyfish's like bedroom essentially for what these would be. There on the floor is the carved wooden panther that you made. And you can see a little spot actually on its back where you would guess just from the the light of being shown up. There's a spot where it's burned a little bit on the back of the neck, and you kind of gather. Make another insight check. You know what? Make it a wisdom roll actually, flat wisdom check.
Oh man.
Yeah, you can't quite piece together what it is, but there's a burned spot on the back of its neck. I will tell Becky that the shape and size is similar to the jellyfish itself, but Navarra doesn't piece that together. What are you doing?
I guess just look around, see if there's anything in there, because they said that they thought Dellen was in there somewhere, right?
So you've seen the extent. Yes, they did. You've seen the extent of it. There doesn't appear to be any. There are small nooks, but it looks like that's where each of these things may, have their own little space. But make a perception check. Okay. The little baby, as soon as it sees, as soon as you've come around there and sees like you and this carving that you've made in front of you, it's like giddy. It's flipping around again like it had been in the entrance to the cave. This time kind of flitting around, and it'll brush its tentacles against you from time to time just as it's kind of swirling around. It just seems so happy that you, the creator of what apparently is its favorite piece, its favorite artwork, are right here. And it's like it's clear that it's very excited that you're here, very like happy and excited. And it keeps kind of flipping down, and it'll rotate and swim around basically the head of the thing, and then down over the tail, and then come back up and like rest essentially on your shoulder. It just looks giddy. But as all of this is happening, this very kind of strange moment, something kind of dawns on you, and you have noticed that Apotheosis is not in here, and you don't feel the kind of latent energy that they would have left behind had it ever been here. But you're still, obviously that kind of dawning on you is a very sad notion. But at the same time, you're still kind of conflicted because of how happy this little thing seems to be. What are you doing?
I don't know, I guess just try to communicate with it again, since I'm in there now.
Sure. Elaborate a bit. How?
I don't know, I guess just try to use like hand gestures and talking, trying to figure out how they got here.
Make, let's call it an intelligence check.
Finally.
So in these, you're making these, gestures with your hands, trying to represent, flying above, and then coming down, to the surface, and then, like you shrug your shoulders and things like basically this series of gestures, and then repeating, of trying to kind of ask this thing a question, and it keeps kind of rotating, like it'll spin in circles a little bit, and kind of almost like a girl with a dress when the spin, like the dress might come up a little bit, you know what I mean, like a dancer, like a stage dance. The tentacles kind of lift up as it kind of spins in circles, and then settle back down again when it stops. And it's clear that it doesn't understand what it is that you're trying to ask it, but it's kind of slowly approaching your face. What are you doing?
Let it, because it doesn't seem like they've wanted to hurt me at all, so.
Okay. You are around the corner a little bit from the bigger ones, you can still see them. Like you're not in like a totally separate chamber or anything, but they haven't moved or appear to react at all. But as soon as it's approaching you, it starts to move towards your face. You hear one of the larger ones move in there, like that. Like maybe there's some sense of don't do that. Like they're trying to stop the baby from making a mistake. But the baby's already too close, and it reaches out one of its little tendrils, and you see just before it gets too close, before it's kind of between your eyes and you can't see it, you see the end of this tendril kind of split open until there's these 5 kind of finger-like appendages, and in the center is just the tiniest little tooth claw, essentially, kind of thing. And it tries to comes up towards you, and it pushes it against your forehead, and it push and nothing. Like you can feel it, but it doesn't feel like it's breaking the skin. And it tries pushing again, and it just tries it a good 3 or 4 times, but nothing's happening. It feels like maybe this thing just isn't matured enough to be able to do that, or whatever it's trying to do.
Okay. What are the big ones doing?
As soon as it tried and failed, the larger one that started moving towards you stopped again, and they're all just kind of in the same places, except that that's the only one that has moved, and it is stayed at its new location, hasn't moved again since. And the little one kind of, the tentacle kind of goes back down, and you can picture it as if it was a kid of like, shoulders slumped and head down, like damn it, like mad that it failed at something. That's the kind of feeling you get from it. But it kind of perks back up again, and it's gesturing frantically at the panther that you've made, and then back at you, and then starts swirling the tentacles around in circles, and then back at the panther and back at you. Make another intelligence roll. Yeah, with that, and I'm still going to count the earlier one with it too. You get the impression that it's telling you to make more, like bring me more of these. Like I really like this toy. Will you make me another one?
Okay.
And it's very insistent. Like it's doing this over and over and over again. And then there's a sound that comes from these that you don't hear in the cave. You only hear it in your mind, and it comes from the other ones. And it's almost like it's collective, like it's coming from all of them at once. And that sound that you hear. You can't place any kind of a meaning to it, but as soon as it's heard, the little one, like the tentacles kind of slump down again, and it kind of latches onto your shoulder again and starts to kind of pulling you back towards the entrance, like to take you out.
Okay.
You heading out?
Yeah.
All right. So the little jellyfish kind of essentially walks you towards the entrance. And kind of, as soon as you're out through it, it spins in circles again and starts dancing around again. And you've kind of passed through where the barrier would appear, and the barrier starts to appear, and this time it does solidify all the way as it's kind of just spinning and dancing, and looks like it's just playing and having fun in the cave entrance. And then the wall is back up again. What are you doing?
I guess go back to camp or wherever it is that we're sleeping in.
Sure.
Wake them up and tell them what happened.
Okay. All right, so you head on back and tell everybody the crew is obviously disheartened. What are Peter and Kita's response?
I'm just going to be probably pretty surprised, because I'm assuming she told us everything that happened, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm going to be like, oh, it touched you, and then it tried to touch your forehead, and okay. I mean, I'm not going to be upset or anything. I'm just going to be like, kind of, wow. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I'll try and absorb everything that I possibly can, whatever information she gave us, and a little bit of concern. I mean, you never know. That thing might have only known ball and good, and
And what's the last one, Taco? I only know words like good and ball and rape. You guys know hand banana?
Yeah.
That's hand banana. Did you ever show that to Becky?
Yeah, I think we watched that one.
Okay.
The Aqua Teen with Ham Banana.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
He's like a little, he almost looks like a balloon animal dog. And he's like yellow.
It's Shake's hand. It's Shake's glove.
That's what it is. Okay.
It's his forefinger. He's only got 4 fingers, and it's his hand. Like, cause he put his hand into the pool or whatever for the cloning or the dog making thing or whatever, and it spit out a clone of his hand that was a dog. So it's just basically, forehand, like a glove, a yellow glove that is in the shape of a dog. But he only knows words like good and ball and rape. So you should show Becky. It was funny.
When he rapes Carl.
Oh man, that's such a stupid show. All right, so
They still have that on if you want to watch it, dude.
it's there's a few places in the newer seasons they keep changing the names for, apparently for no reason. I think it's still on, but I haven't watched it since probably. It might have been that Hand Banana season. Basically, like it was probably 2008, 2009 last time I watched it, something like that.
Yeah.
So, anyway, though, so crew's obviously very disheartened. Drew is at least trying to glass half full looking at it. He says, "Well, I mean, we're at least a step ahead than we were earlier tonight, so it's good news." So he says, "All right, well, let's finish getting some sleep, and then in the morning, I'll head back to the ship. Jack and Alice can come with me. We can try to, help locate the apotheosis, see if we can maybe find it with what little time we have left. These creatures, I don't know. I mean, it couldn't hurt to I guess keep learning what you can from them, Nivara. Maybe maybe we can get some more information. Elspeth and Yorith both want to go with you at least next time you go back. So that, they want to go at least with that, but you can, whether you're making more carvings or not, it's up to you. But they at least want to go back to see these things if it'll let them in as well. So morning comes, Jack and Drew and Alice head back to the ship. What are Ketis and Peter doing? Head back to the ship. You can try to go out to the, out to meet the jellyfish as well. You can go do something else. What are you guys doing?
I'll probably just go back to the ship because I'm going to assume that, if a whole crew of people show up, they're not going to open the door, so.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll probably do the same.
Okay. All right. So you guys, make your way back to the ship with Drew and Jack and Alice. Both of you make an Arcana check. Roll a 6 and still get a 17. Okay. You, when you're back there, it's an hour or two in. You guys have had enough time here to kind of recognize that this swirling kind of maelstrom that's in this inland sea is diffusing the source somehow. It's like it's kind of spreading out the arcane latent energy that would be there, and it's kind of diffusing it across a large space. And the kind of condensed source that you were getting, where they picked up that they thought that the apotheosis might be in that cave, it's spread out too much to be that precise. So you're not really having much luck in finding where the apotheosis might be, for locating the actual source, other than that it does still appear to be somewhere in there. But for Nivara and Elspeth and Yorith heading out back to the cave, Nivara?
Yeah, just make like a tiny carving.
Okay, another panther.
Since I'm not gonna have time to make a big one.
Okay. All right, so you head down there, and as you approach, the wall is back up. It is daytime now, and maybe your guess. Maybe they leave the wall up during the day, but since these little stone people go to sleep and don't come out at night, they've just they play a little bit, or they let the baby play at least. When there isn't any essentially threat to them. But as you approach, the wall kind of begins to go down, and the baby is still right there, just waiting for you, like it had been waiting for you this whole time. And as soon as the wall comes down and it kind of notices that there's others, it's kind of cautious for a second, and it kind of flits left and right a little bit, like maybe it's looking at them or kind of taking in whether they're a threat or not, and then it kind of comes right out towards you and is kind of reaching a tendril out towards you.
Okay, I guess reach for it.
Okay. And it kind of is reaching out to essentially wrap its tendril around your finger and starts kind of turning away, like it's pulling you into the cave again.
Okay, I'll go.
And Yorith is, as soon as this happens, Yorith has pulled out her book and is starting to kind of sketch this thing. She sketched the larger one as much as she could from memory, but now up close, even though this one's smaller, she's already beginning, like, she's not saying a word, she's trying to be as you know, not present as possible to not disrupt this interaction that you're having. But both, basically, Elsbeth is not writing at this moment. It's probably the only time you've seen her without her journal for a while, but Yorith is essentially sketching constantly through all of this. And as you guys are kind of being led back towards into the cave there, the jellyfish is flitting around, and it spins, kind of lets go of your finger, and it spins, and this kind of, you feel this kind of wet, like water, almost like a viscous water, splash against your hand, and it kind of is like, you look down, it's kind of this dark blue liquid that's on your hand. It doesn't hurt or anything. But you see that, and it's kind of still moving further into the cave. You guys just keep following?
Yeah.
Okay. So you've made it back, and it kind of takes you back to that same little cove. There is not room for the three of you to all be standing there, plus this thing. It doesn't take up much space, of course. It's not very big. So it's kind of playing with you the same way that it had been previously. It doesn't really, there's still no kind of common ground for communication with this thing. But I mean, are you carrying the small carving? Like, is it in your hands or in your bag? What are you doing with it?
Well, I probably would have had it in my bag, so I'll take it out and just kind of hold it out to him.
So if this was a kid, you would see the eyes go wide, and you kind of get that impression from it, and how just like enamored and surprised this thing is. And just so happy, and as soon as you've kind of hold it out to it, it's small enough that this thing kind of wraps its tentacles all the way around it, like a spider might wrap its legs around its prey. But it's wrapped its legs around it, and it kind of slowly begins to sink towards the floor, like this added weight is too much that it can't hold itself up. But it just is trying to hug the shit out of this thing, and is spinning in circles as it's kind of lowering towards the floor. And it kind of lowers itself over towards the bigger one as it's basically falling towards the bigger one slowly, until it rests itself there, and then it lets go, and it's still just sitting there. You can see it kind of rubbing tentacles over it, like it's trying to pet it almost, and looks to just be playing this thing. You do see that the kind of dark blue liquid has now stained this one as well, and it just keeps kind of playing with this. And Elsbeth says, do you mind? I mean, can I get? I just want to get close so I can see if I can, if it'll let me anyway, see if I can try to get as much information about it as I can.
Yeah.
So she kind of, carefully moves closer. You kind of step away just a little bit to give her some room. The larger ones similarly have not moved this time. They've stayed where they were. And she's over there kind of watching just intently, and she gets really close. She puts her face like right up, almost to this thing, only a foot or so away, as the baby is playing with this new toy, and it's spinning around a little bit and just kind of just super excited and enjoying this thing. And you notice actually some of the flitted off blue liquid actually hits Elsbeth in the face a little bit. You see her kind of wipe it away, like distractedly, like she didn't really notice it. And you notice that a little bit was left on her lip. And she's still just kind of transfixed and staring at this thing, and just giving every bit of attention she might have to trying to study this, while Yorith is kind of over her shoulder jotting down, like drawing this thing, making this diagram and everything. But this whole interaction it's only been maybe 10 minutes or so at this point, but from outside, Peter and Ketis outside, above the ship, the skies are already darkening. And inside, in this cavern, the light for Nivara and Elsbeth and Yorith is just this kind of glowing, beating purple color from the crystal. So you're not really noticing anything until up above, Ketis and Peter, the rest of the crew in the ship there. It happens so rapidly this time, like it almost feels like it was an ambush of some kind. The pillars begin to spill out of the sky and begin crashing into the ground. You guys can communicate over the walkie-talkies, of course, but before you even have a chance to warn them, Nivara, you and Yorith and Elsbeth, the ground is shaking out from underneath you, and these just violent eruptions of these tar pillars kind of crashing through the rock. Drew shouts out over the walkie-talkies for everybody to get back to the ship immediately. This kind of violent crash sends rocks and stones flying. Make a dex save on Navarra. Oh, damn. I got 2 natural 20s. The shaking of this is just so violent. You are thrown forward, and you actually collapse onto your carving. The baby jellyfish kind of, you didn't squish it. It's basically just right underneath you, and it looks immediate. Well, you get the sense of it anyways, of it being immediately very scared. You kind of look up and around, and you can see that the cavern has been torn open, and you can see the dark sky above, and these black tar flecked with radiant colors is beginning to seep over the sides of this kind of hole that's been ripped in the ceiling. You look around and see that one of the larger jellyfish's tendrils are wiggling mortally, and its head is crushed under a boulder. You see one of the others is kind of floated off to the side a little bit, and it's like tilted. It's not. The head isn't up anymore. The head is on the side, and the tendrils kind of swirling behind it. It doesn't look like it's moving right. It looks like it's the way that water might move a dead thing. That's the impression you get from it. And you don't see any of the others. What are you doing?
I guess grab one of the tentacles of the baby and just try to get out of the cavern.
Okay. So you that's not the right one. That's fine. The little one actually is already, kind of rushed up to you and is like clasping onto you, and it feels like a scared child. Is kind of clasped around your arm. But it's obvious you need to run. And Elsbeth stands up. She says, "We've got to get out of here." He said he's outside. You hear Drew over the walkie-talkie said that the ship is outside and ready to get you.
All right. So, I guess run to the ship.
All right. Yorth stands up and kind of rights herself. Both she and Elsbeth managed to not get knocked down, but you see Yorth immediately pull a small stick out of her, something you've seen her use quite a bit, out of her pack, and she mumbles something, and you see the rocks in front of you smush down into a smooth shape, like just crush, as if they were impacted by something invisible, instead of being kind of a rocky way to try to climb your way out. She's essentially smushed it down into this kind of smooth ramp for you guys to climb up through. But as soon as you crest up to the top, you see swarms of these black tar creatures beginning to spill up out of it, chasing between you and the ship, which is a few hundred feet away. What are you doing?
There's no clear path to the ship.
It's the clear path between you and the ship is clear right now, but you have seconds before the tar creatures have started to fill in the space.
Alright, well, I guess just make a run for it and try to keep the creatures off of us as best we can.
Okay. Alright, so you're running as fast as you can, and as soon as you make it out of the cave entrance, a few seconds later, not more than a dozen strides, the creatures have kind of blocked your way to the ship. Ketis and Peter, you guys see, from the ship's deck, you can see, you guys are low enough to the ground, of course, to be able to pick her up when she gets there with Elsbeth and Yorth, but you see these creatures kind of beginning to swarm around them. What are you doing?
Am I close enough to throw some death nails at or something?
Yeah.
Clear space.
Yeah, make 2 attack rolls.
Okay.
Wait, it's more than 2. How many do you get now?
4.
Oh, alright, well, shit. One of those is a crit, so...
Oh, shit, sorry.
2 of those is a crit? Oh, okay, you gotta... Alright. So 2... the 18 hits. So 2 of them hit. Go ahead and roll damage twice.
And then just... What for the grit? Another... What's that, D8?
Just, I guess, roll it again. It wouldn't, like, if we hadn't bypassed the crit, that was my fault. Then it would have been double, but yeah, just roll the D8 again.
Okay.
There you go. So one of these, you send it out and you see this kind of hulking, ape-like creature that's rushing on its fists towards Yorth and Navarra and Elspeth. And you send this out, and it goes straight through the back. It's kind of this same material almost hitting it, but it goes straight through the back, leaving a hole. And the thing just kind of sloughs off to either side, and just collapses forward and skids through the dirt towards Navarra. The other, you send it out, and it hits one of these smaller creatures. This thing with this big, almost sombrero-shaped head. And it hits it, and it takes one arm off, but the creature's still running. It's got these little sharp appendages. You tore one off of it, but it's still running and scurrying towards them. What's Peter doing?
Definitely too far to do a mass teleport, right? How far are we?
The mass teleport, you'd have to be touch range for them, don't you? What
Yeah, I
level
think
is it?
it's fairly close. I think it's 7. I think it's like 10 to 15 feet, but are we floating above them? Or how far away?
They're 100 feet away from you right now. And they're 100 feet forward, not above or below. What level was it? 7?
Gotcha. Yeah, it won't work then. I guess what I'll do then instead is I will do... how many things are chasing them right now?
There's 8 more that are between them right now. One of them is got an arm ripped off.
Can I cast a magic missile, but at max level to push out as many missiles as possible, aiming for, legs and appendages to slow?
Sure. I like the idea for that. So we're gonna. Where's your magic missile? That's level 1, right? There it is. All right. You're gonna cast at 9th level.
Yes, sir. Take out as many as I can. Damage as many as I can.
I wonder how often a 9th level magic missile's ever been cast before.
It's more of a distraction. It's just kneecapping everybody.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. 1 more dart for each level above first. So it's 7 more darts plus the 3, so 10 total darts. Roll. Are you okay? So there's 8 of them, and you're gonna get 10 darts. So you know what? What we'll do is just
Well,
for
I could probably just do 8 darts then, I guess, since I don't need that many. So I'll drop it down to level 7. Is it?
Yeah, it'd be 7. All right, go ahead and you don't see these guys are kind of the shock forces. They're very fast, and Ketis actually took out the head of one of the larger. There aren't many more of the apes. There are two of the smaller ones, and then the rest are these very tall and spindly things that you didn't recognize where these came from, but they look like twigs, like tall, kind of moving twigs that are very fast. But they don't look very healthy, like these magic missiles might blow right through them. Go ahead and roll 8d4. And I'll just split it up amongst them. Got 1. So in the sake of simplicity, you send out this just kind of wave of glowing sharp balls of energy that just kind of impact these things in a leg here and a knee there and take an ankle off of another, and all of them except for 2 collapse forward and kind of smooth and down to the dirt and are starting to kind of crawl and pull themselves toward. One of the mushroom ones and one of the stick ones is still up and moving towards them. Navarre, what are you doing? You see this kind of tall, very, very tall and lanky twig-like thing moving towards you, and another small mushroom thing with sharp, like, just spikes coming off of it everywhere, basically.
Alright, well, I'm gonna use Sunburst, but it's a 60-foot radius, so make it so that way we're outside of that radius, I guess. But
Okay.
it's hitting them.
All right. What level's that?
8.
Okay, breaking out the big guns. 60-foot radius. Centered on your point you choose. Okay. It will have to be. Actually, you're far enough back. Yeah. Okay. I mean, you're still closing distance. You're at probably 75 feet at this point, but you could hit it in a space that's not going to hit the ship. Go ahead and hit the cast on it. Well, I guess what's your DC? An 8 and a 2. Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's definitely above an 8, so they didn't succeed either way. Go ahead and roll the 12d6. It'll almost certainly be enough, so... Jesus. So many dice. Yeah. So these things, this beam kind of erupts from behind it, looks like a small sun, almost like the apotheosis itself, really. And these things are just dissolved, like smoke float, or like dust floating up into the wind as these things are just destroyed by this explosion behind it of light. Your path, in fact, actually, not only that, but the other ones that were beginning to swarm in from the side are also knocked away from it. So your path is clear. You see, Yorth is yanked out the one that she was carrying again, and you see that she's kind of aiming it on the ground in front of you and starting to lift it up, like she's struggling with this, like her arm is kind of having to tense to struggle with this, and you see the ground beginning to kind of push together in front of you as you're rushing along it. It looks like she's kind of built like this kind of pathway for you guys to make it straight to the ship, so you're not below it, you don't have to jump or anything else, as you guys are making this mad dash towards the ship, and you make it up towards the dock door, essentially called a postern. And you hop on through it and you're onto the ship. You guys are safely there, with this kind of jellyfish still terrified and wrapped around your arm. But you make it up, to the ship in time, and the Hermian shoes immediately peers off into the. Drew kind of aims it up into the sky and starts to head off into the jellyfish surface. And as soon as you pass on through, everything kind of restitches back together. You're all back in your kind of original locations. You look down Nivara, and the jellyfish is still wrapped around your arm. Where you guys kind of appear in the next cycle. And over the span of the next few cycles, actually, you guys manage to... that's not the one I wanted. That's fine. No, that's not the one I wanted either. That'll work. Oh, here we go. Next few cycles, you guys manage to kind of take time, learning about this thing as much as you can. It's still tough to communicate with in any way, shape, or form. But... we'll end here in just a second, but you guys in the 65th cycle, which actually before we get to that, Ketis or anybody else, did you guys have any further parlay questions to speak to the hunger? This would have been, those could have happened during that time, so.
I don't think so.
Nivara, Peter?
No.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
Okay. Keep that in mind if you guys have further questions or anything else you wanted to say to the hunger. That you guys can essentially do that, during the kind of off cycles, because again, we're not playing every cycle, of course. So you guys arrive though in the 65th cycle. The Hermian shoes snaps back into reality above this kind of gleaming white planet. Baby jellyfish is still there, of course, still scared. Every time this kind of reappearing happens, it feels this kind of shock of fear again. Alice has gotten very close with it and is like wanting to play with it constantly. They've become kind of close friends. But the appearance over this planet, although it looks peaceful, is almost an hour into this reconnaissance, flying over this planet, that these massive explosions begin to rock the air around the ship. You're clearly being shot at. You look down onto the surface and you can see mushroom clouds from the surface giving away that something is trying to shoot you out of the sky. This violent hit rocks the ship, spinning it out of control, sending the shoes careening towards the surface. It was hit, basically. You guys are heading down towards the planet. You're about to crash. And that's where we're going to end today's session.
Cool.